Today I'm going to talk to you how brioche knitting creates a squishy, reversible fabric, and it happens by working one stitch and then slipping the next. It's reversible. Here we've got two colours with the blue and the grey, and here I've got an example with white on the front and grey on the back, but it's completely reversible, as you can see. Okay, it's a beautiful finish. So it's, as I say, it's worked by working one stitch and slipping the next. And when you slip a stitch, let's do it with this colour because it's a bit easier to see. Instead of carrying the working yarn in front of that slip stitch, there's a slip stitch there, you take the working yarn over the top of it. You give that stitch what is in effect a little shawl in the other colour if you're working in two colours. So in the following row, that stitch and its shawl are worked as one stitch. They will either be what's known as barked, which is a brioche knit, or burped, which is a brioche purl, but more about that later. Now, the temptation when you are learning brioche knitting is to jump straight in and work the two colour brioche. It's just so incredibly beautiful. But as in most things in life, we need to learn the basics first. And so we're going to start with one colour shortly. But I just want to show you a few different things about brioche before we do that. Brioche creates a very lofty fabric, very stretchy fabric. Look how much that stretches that way and that way. So the recommendation is that it's advisable to go down a needle size if you want to control how much give the fabric has. It also uses a lot more yarn than, say, stocking stitch would. It is also recommended that you use yarns that have a bit of bite, so maybe like a felted type yarn or a mohair with something else potentially. However, I don't use those type of yarns because I can't wear them around my neck. So I use quite slippy yarns. As you can see here, this yarn is really nice and shiny, and I haven't had any particular problem with it. I've also used sock yarn before to create this beautiful little sample here. I hope you can see the colours. Beautiful sort of pinks and blues on one side, and then a darker colour with the pink just popping through between on the other side. So my advice is to you is to just try whichever yarn you would like to try with the normal size needle that you would use for that yarn and see how it works out. If you think it's stretching too much, then you can try again with a smaller needle size. Now, when you're counting rows and stitches in brioche, each one of these slip stitches with this shawl counts as one stitch. You must always remember that. It's so important. The yarn over isn't counted separately. So if you look at those, we've got three sort of loops there. One is a stitch, one is another stitch with its yarn over. So that is two stitches that we're looking at there. Two rows are worked for each counted row that appears on the face of the fabric. Half the stitches are worked in one row, and then the other half, the stitches that were slipped in the previous row, are then worked in the following row. So what that means is two worked rows equals one counted row. So when you're counting your rows, do it by counting up a knit stitch row. Sorry, let's do it this way. Do it by counting up one column of knit stitches. So if you wanted to know how many rows were between, say, that bit there and that bit there, you'd count these knit stitches on one side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And for each counted row, you've actually worked two rows. So that will be 14 rows have been worked to give you 7 rows in the pattern. Okay, it's usually quite clear in the pattern exactly how many rows you need to work. Now, the other thing I want to say is that Nancy Marchant has developed a set of abbreviations and terminology specifically for brioche knitting. Quite often this is just a BR in front of the traditional abbreviation. So for example, BRK, brioche knit, also known as a bark, it means you knit the stitch that was slipped in the previous row together with its yarn over. So let's look at one of these here. You can see that one there, that's a stitch with its yarn over, and we're on a row of knits with the white. So if we were working the white on this row, we would brioche knit that stitch or bark that stitch. Okay. If we were working this way and we were on a row where this is a purl, these are knits, knits, and these are purls in between, then you would brioche purl that stitch, which means purl the stitch with its yarn over as one stitch. Okay, so that's a brioche knit and a brioche purl, and we're going to be practicing all of those. The next one is to talk about is the slip one yarn over, which is what this slip stitch is with its little shawl. So when you work one of those, whichever side you're on, whether you've worked a brioche knit or a brioche purl before it, you have to make sure that the yarn is at the front of the work as you're working on it for this row before you slip that next stitch. And then the yarn is taken over the back, over the top of that stitch. Okay, so always the yarn must be at front. So if you've knitted the previous row, you need to bring that yarn to the front between the needles before you slip yarn over the next stitch. So that's a useful thing to remember. The other thing I want to say generally about the work is that I tend to have self-edge stitches. Let me go to my straight one rather than this curve shape now to show you what I mean by that. So I have a self-edge stitch going up each side. In this particular example, it is the blue going up there. And the blue is my main colour for this particular example. What I mean by that is if you see the blues, they are travelling together and joining up with the other blues as you go. Whereas if you look on the other side, the greys seem to be just popping out and back in again. They don't seem to be meeting up in these little sections here like they do on the front of the work. And remember, it's completely reversible, so it doesn't really matter which way you do it, but you choose whether you want your slightly lighter colour or your slightly darker colour to be the main side, the side where it's going to be joined up like these are. And then your opposite colour will just keep popping in and out on the opposite side. The last thing I want to show you is that there are increases and decreases in brioche. In this example here, hopefully you can see this circle here. Out of that one stitch, there's a stitch, 3 stitches have been born. So we've got a blue stitch, we've got a purl in the grey stitch, and we've got another blue knit stitch. So we've increased 2 stitches from that one stitch, ending up with 3. So you always do everything in pairs in brioche because you have to have a pair of a stitch and its corresponding friend with a yarn over. So that's what an increase looks like on the right side. All the blues are all joined up, but on the wrong side, they're not joined up. There's that increase. And that's because on the wrong side or the reverse side, the colours just pop out now and again. They don't carry up through the increases because the increases were worked on a right side row. We've also got some decreases going on here, which I'd just like to show you. Here's one which is a right leaning decrease. So the decrease is going that way and then over the top of it there to give that lovely shape going up there. So there's another one there, another one there, and another one there. And again, a decrease, you start off with 3 stitches. So here we had blue, grey, blue, and we ended up with 1 blue. So you lose 2 stitches. Again, always done in pairs. There's a left leaning decrease here going on. There's one there, one there, one there, one there. So it slopes the other way. Now we're going to be covering all of this when we get on to the beautiful 2-colour work, We're going to start with one colour though, so in the next exercise I'll be working through with you how to work this particular sample with some shaping going on here. So we've got a normal brioche there at the beginning, and then we've got what's called syncopated brioche, so where the knits and the pearls swap over, which can give a nice effect. And then a little bit more and we start working on the two colour stuff. And then we've got two colour syncopated as well, which swaps the jumping out of the different colours. So here the brown's jumping out more than the white, whereas it was the opposite way round. And here on the back, the white is now jumping out more than the brown. So syncopation is really quite useful. And then we're going to go on and learn how to do increases and decreases to create some lovely patterns. So let's get started on the first exercise and learn how to work the brioche in one colour, but pretty soon we'll be moving on to two colours.